What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Tuesday, October 27th, and we are here to recap the Monday Night Football game between the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Chicago Bears. This game has no bearing on my personal life. In no way did I root for anything about this game. I sat back and casually watched it in my Express clothes. By the way, Express is presenting this episode. Express is all new and all about you with a fresh assortment of casual, versatile, and super comfortable styles. Find out more about Express and their exclusive offer for our Pick Six Podcast listeners later in the show. So, John Breech, Ryan Wilson joining me here. We don't think there will be a surprise Sean Wagner McGuff experience on this podcast. He's a coward, a front runner. He's too scared to show up when the Bears get their bleep packed, which they did by the Rams 24-10.
They got a what packed? P-A-C-K-E-D?
Packed.
Oh, okay. That's a new one. This is not a good looking football team. And we sort of knew that coming in. And we were talking yesterday about how Russell Wilson, if he plays a B-minus game or B-plus game, the defense doesn't show up, there's no chance. If Nick Foles does not play an A-plus game and the defense doesn't play an A-plus game, there is no chance in Chicago.
Russell Wilson on the Bears would be really good, by the way.
They would be undefeated.
Wilson, I feel like if Nick Foles would have played a B-minus game here, this would have been a lot closer and possibly the Bears win.
Breech, you could be right. I'll be honest. Yeah. I was angry watching this game because it was so awful and I was so tired because we talked till 3 a.m. last night and I expected a little something more from a 5-1 team and didn't get it. So you're much closer to the truth than I am, but it's just, so the quarterback situation is frustrating, but as you point out, Nick Foles is, I think we all agree, is better than Mitch Trubisky. But at one point in the game, what was Brian Greasy made the remark about a little nugget. Brian Greasy, this is from Jason Leisner on Twitter.
Oh, this is crazy.
Brian Greasy just said that Nick Foles told ESPN that sometimes Matt Nagy, the head coach, sends in a play call and Foles already knows it won't work because he won't have enough time after the snap. So that to me seems like something. So we could talk all we want about the quarterback situation and the offense being putrid. Maybe the head coach is also a problem.
Well, funny you should say that. Dan Weirder of the Chicago Tribune, friend of the program, tweeted out that for the 24th time in Matt Nagy's 40 games as Bears coach, the offense has failed to get to 21 points. That is not good. I mean, this guy was hired to come in and turn Mitchell Trubisky into a franchise quarterback. He didn't come into Chicago to be somebody who runs a decent defense with a crappy quarterback. They've had that for 50 years. You don't need that. You came in to get the offense revved up and to get it going. And Matt Nagy's offense, and I don't know whether you put it on Matt Nagy or whether you put it on Ryan Pace for the people he's acquired. But I mean, the reality is that their offense stinks and it's not good. It's not impressive. It's not creative. David Montgomery runs for 3 yards and then they throw to the lifeless corpse of Jimmy Graham every now and then. It's a terrible offense.
Well, and you just said that he was brought in to turn Mitchell Trubisky into a franchise quarterback. He literally did the opposite of that. He got Mitchell Trubisky benched and he traded for Nick Foles, who was probably the 6th best quarterback available during the offseason to be acquired, whether through trade or by signing. And you look at what the Bears have done this season, it's all defense. It's like that win over the Buccaneers 20-19 because their defense was good. They beat the New York Giants 17-13. How embarrassing would that have been? That was all defense. They beat the Panthers 23-16. Their defense just shows up every game. They scored the only touchdown against the Rams. And it is just unbelievable because you had they drove down to what I think the 4-yard line, and Nick Foles throws into double coverage and throws an interception. And then they got down the side of the 10-yard line another time in this game. So there's 2 times in the second half where if they get a touchdown, this is a whole different ball game. But Nick Foles is a statue back there, which is an insult to statues because those are more mobile than Foles, and he just gets crushed on 4th down. So it's just like there's no hope back there. I think maybe
by the way,
Foles
Brian Greasy was definitely not supposed to tell that story on air.
Yeah, that was that, and I just put the clip in there too. If you want the audio,
you were talking to Nick Foles yesterday, and sometimes play calls come in, and I know I don't have time to execute that play call, and I'm the one out there getting hit. Matt Nagy, he doesn't know how much time there is back here. Like Brian Greasy is going to get yelled at by somebody.
No. Brian Greasy is not getting yelled at. Nick Foles is getting yelled at. Why is he flapping his gums?
Fair.
I mean, what's Brian Greasy?
Greasy, because it's a story though, and he's not directly quoting Foles. And like, who do you think is more likely to throw someone under the bus, Nick Foles or like someone with Brinson's personality? Like Nick Foles seems like the last. No offense, Brinson, but Foles seems like literally the last guy in the world who would.
You said no offense to Brinson. Well, he's peacocking around because the Bears lost.
but like Foles doesn't seem like the guy who would throw his head coach under the bus.
Let me ask you this, Breech, because you mentioned it, and this is always said during the offseason, but now I think the perspective may have changed. That you talked about them acquiring Nick Foles when there's so many other options. So we'll do a quick comparison. Would you rather have right now? Would you rather have Nick Foles or Andy Dalton?
Andy Dalton is somewhat mobile, and that's all they need because once you put pressure on Nick Foles,
he's done. Sorry. Yes or no? Nick Foles. Who do you want? Just 2 words. Nick.
You
Foles
wanted to get out of here in 10 to 15 to 25 minutes. And you brought up Andy Dalton. What's wrong with you?
Andy Dalton.
What about you, Brinson? Would you rather have Nick Foles right now? Nick Foles or Andy Dalton?
I'll take Mitchell Trubisky.
That's okay. That means Nick Foles. So fair enough. We're not sold on Andy Dalton. Hold on. Now, let me get through the list, and then you can talk. Tyrod Taylor. Was he available? No, they didn't. They already had Tyrod Taylor. So okay, Cam Newton or Nick right now, Cam Newton or Nick Foles in Chicago.
Are you freaking serious?
I mean, if it was like first 3 weeks of the season, is this pre-COVID Cam?
Right
who was tearing it up right in the second?
Cam, I rewatched that game. That game's not on Cam. He has no weapons. The offensive scheme isn't.
Okay, listen. You
take Cam all day long over Nick Foles.
If Breech is triggered by Andy Dalton, you got to settle down with the Cam. So 2 words is what I need from you, numb nuts.
Cam Newton.
Breech. Right now, Cam Newton or Nick Foles in Chicago?
Cam.
See, you hesitated. So I also, first of all, you need to watch the game again and not be
keep
drunk.
Playing your game. Jameis Winston or Nick Foles? Right.
I'm taking Jameis. But that's also because we haven't seen Jameis.
Phillip Rivers or Nick Foles?
Well, Phillip Rivers.
But it's not as clear as Brinson seems to think it is. I mean, Phillip Rivers he's played well. He played well last.
Tom Brady or Nick Foles?
Tom Brady.
Nick
Foles beat Tom Brady. I mean,
Tom Brady might be the MVP right now. Look, the point, but I don't like didn't want to put it all. Like I didn't want to put it all on Cam, and you don't want to put it all on Dalton.
Cam played like dog crap, dude.
He played awful. He was awful. He'd been awful for 2 weeks. But I mean, I'm just saying, like Dalton played awful, but it's not all on Dalton. And this isn't all. That wasn't all on Cam, and this isn't all on Foles. Now Foles missed.
No one says it is. But I mean, the point is that we crushed that decision, and it turns out it wasn't a great decision, but it wasn't as lopsided as perhaps we thought.
Going to Nick Foles or
opting for Nick Foles over Cam or Andy?
No. It was they opted for Nick Foles so that way they could like give Trubisky the job, and Trubisky won the job, and then he was so bad that they gave it to Foles anyway. But I think the bigger problem for the Bears here is not Nick Foles or Mitchell Trubisky. It's Ryan Pace and maybe Matt Nagy. Like Ryan Pace is not good at his job objectively, and I know he won Executive of the Year, but this guy. He used an early pick on David Montgomery, who is not good. David Montgomery's not good.
If you're going to defend Cam and Andy Dalton, I'll defend David Montgomery because I was actually having the same thoughts midway through this game. I said, God, I liked him a lot 2 years ago. He was number 2 behind Josh Jacobs in terms of how I like the running backs. In a different situation, I think he has more success, but he has not been good, and there's no other way around it. And I just wonder if
already set the NFL record for career 3-yard carries.
So talking about Matt Nagy, let's indulge me and let's play one more game. We'll rank the young guys coming out of the Andy Dalton, out of the Andy Reid,
brainwashed you.
I know Andy Reid coaching tree. So Matt Nagy's clearly one of them, and let's rank these guys. I include Doug Peterson because he's sort of a newish coach, even though he's probably a little older than Matt. Sean McDermott, that's it. Like John Harbaugh, but he's a little older. So Matt Nagy, Sean McDermott, Doug Peterson, and I'll include Todd Bowles because he's a youngish coach, even though he's older. So. How are we ranking? I mean, Matt Nagy seems to be last in that situation, right?
I think Todd Bowles is a Bruce Arians coaching tree.
Well, according to Wikipedia, he's part of the Andy Reid coaching tree.
Okay. All right. I'll give it to you. I mean, Ron Rivera is too.
Right. But I didn't want to use I'm trying to keep them relatively young, newish coaches.
Well, McDermott's one.
Right. Well, wait. Peterson won a Super Bowl.
I'll take McDermott over Peterson.
I think it would too. I just want to make Devo mad.
Devo, can you cut that and put it on Twitter for tomorrow?
Sean McDermott's a great coach.
He doesn't have a Super Bowl. He's never won a playoff game.
Says
Andy Dalton of coaches.
That's a funny edgy talking yourself. Okay, Sean
McDermott. Here, I'm going to say this about Matt Nagy because I actually think he has done a decent. He's not picking his quarterback, as you said, Brinson. It's Ryan Pace to blame. He's the one who's giving the personnel. And you look at what Matt Nagy's been given. He took over a 5-11 team in 2017, went 12-4. Everyone at CBS Sports picked the Chicago Bears to finish in last place.
Did he
in
go
2020
or Vic Fangio?
Who? Fangio what?
Vic Fangio was defensive coordinator. I mean, that's
okay. Right. So you want to take a little bit of credit away from him. That's fine for 2018. They still went 12-4. And this year they're 5-2. If they go 4-5 down the stretch in their final whatever games, they're going to go 9-7. They're in the playoffs.
I agree. And I've been saying as much. Now, I do think that is likely when you look at their schedule, because they have the Jaguars and the Texans and the Vikings and a very spicy matchup against the Lions. But I do not think that this team is guaranteed a playoff spot, the Bears. They're not good. Offensively, they can't do anything.
Right.
They can't stay on schedule. If they run into a semi-decent defenses or a semi-decent defense, and defenses are starting to tighten up a little bit here as we get into the middle of the season, they are in trouble and they can't move the ball. Now, they're good on defense, but they're not great.
They're number 5 according to Football Outsiders.
Eddie Jackson looked like he hyperextended his knee. That is a big problem.
That's an issue. By the way, you mentioned the Texans coming in. I don't know if you mentioned them as potentially getting steamrolled by the Bears or maybe a competitive matchup. But the Bears are 14th in DVO heading into Week 7. The Texans are 15th, and they're flipped. Like the Bears are 26th in offense. The Texans are 27th in defense. The Texans are 8th in offense, and I just mentioned the Bears are 5th in defense. So it'll be an interesting matchup. But I think right now, I sort of like the Texans. I think you said the game's in 2 weeks.
The Bears schedule is actually open in one of my browsers, so I can tell you. They have the Saints next week, Sunday afternoon in Chicago. They have the Titans the week after that.
Oh, wait a second now.
In Tennessee.
You said they have an easy schedule.
The Saints and the Titans are easy?
It's after their bye. They still have to play the Vikings twice, the Jags, the Lions, the Texans. So there are a lot of easy games, but there are a couple difficult.
The Vikings twice. I don't think it's crazy that they would split with the Vikings. The Vikings aren't going to lose every game, but they could beat the Vikings twice. The Texans they should beat. They'll be favored. They'll beat the Jaguars. They haven't played the Packers once.
If they win those games you just mentioned, that's 8 right there. And then you just have to win 1 out of 2 games against Green Bay, Tennessee, and New Orleans to get to 9 wins.
Oh, well, 8-8 might be slapped there in the face.
8-8. I don't think 8-8's getting in the playoffs in the NFC.
No.
Oh no, it's definitely not.
I'm not convinced they're beating the Texans.
Right, but okay, so I feel like we've just sort of done a big picture. What specifically from this game? This game stunk. It was awful. It was terrible.
Well, hold on. You want to ask a question about this game? I got something to say about this game. What you guys
don't mention the punt.
What you just witnessed was possibly the greatest punting performance in the history of football.
Breech. How many times do you have to do this podcast before you realize we talk about one team and then we take a break and then we talk about the other?
It's called a tease.
All right, coming up at
got you there. The tease dunk.
Laying in my house watching this game, wondering why do I exist? I was at least glad that I was wearing some comfortable clothes. There's no denying what comfortable clothes can do for your confidence. Maybe Matt Nagy needs, maybe Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles need some comfortable clothes. Maybe they need the call Express. I put on Express and I'm having a good day. I'm going to grind through Monday. Got to write an article. Got to do a show. Got to do 3 or 4 podcasts. Got to teach my son an entire day's worth of curriculum. Got to hang out with my wife. Look, it's a busy Monday, man. You got to be casual, but you got to be comfortable and you got to be, efficient. That's what Express offers. Some days we're doing this podcast at 9 a.m. Some days we do the pod at 2 a.m. I need all day comfort. That's what I get from Express. Like I'm wearing sweats, but nobody that sees me on CBS Sports HQ or the Pick 6 YouTube channel or out about in Raleigh knows that when I leave my house. Funny. So check out what Express has to offer. Text the word football to 397-737 and you'll get $25 off a $50 purchase. That's 50% off a $50 purchase. Just text 397-737. Oh, sorry. Text the word football to 397-737. So, Breech, you mentioned a show from Johnny Hekker. Is he the MVP?
He is Brinson, this was one of the greatest punting performances in NFL history. I was like Wilson. I was getting pretty bored of this game. And all of a sudden, Johnny Hekker had a fantastic first half. And I was like, I'm going to keep this on. Well, because I have to podcast with these guys, so I should probably know what happens. But I want to see if there's any more punts. And the Rams offense there's going to be more punts. And here is what he did. He punted 5 times in this game. And on all 5 punts, he pinned the Chicago Bears inside their own 10-yard line. He pinned them at the 1. He pinned them at the 5. He pinned them at the 6. He pinned them at the 7. And he pinned them at the 10. That is absolutely insanity. In the first half, his first 2 punts set up eventual Rams scores because the Bears didn't do anything. Then they had to punt. The Rams got good field position. And then LA went down and scored. So their first 10 points, Johnny Hekker should get the assist. And in the second half, when the Bears were trying to kind of claw their way back in, he launched a 57-yard punt that got down at the 1-yard line and a 63-yard punt that got down at the 6-yard line. My God, I'm going to watch this game over and over. It might have been the boringest game ever for most people, but if you appreciate good punts, this is a game you're not going to have on your DVR or in your video library so you can enjoy it for the rest of the time.
You're not going to mention the watermelon punt?
The watermelon punt is brilliant. And we saw the onside kick with the Cowboys earlier this season. That was the watermelon kick with Zerline. He was with the Rams, and Bones is the.
Hey, speaking of Cowboys, did you see Mike Nolan today on Monday?
No, why?
He's doing his press conference. He's like, hold on. Sorry, guys. I had some Tabasco in my finger, and it got in my eye.
He did not say that.
Yeah, yes, he did.
That's real.
This, right?
Huh?
They showed it like 100 times on TV. He's like, hold on. I rubbed a bunch of Tabasco in my eye. Hold on. I gotta.
I spent all day driving. I missed it.
I was going to say, have you not been on the internet for a single minute? It's literally been everywhere.
I woke up late this morning in Stanford because I have a doctor's appointment in Syracuse. So I had to run. I literally got to my doctor's appointment nonstop and got there like 10 minutes to. I had to go to my kid's soccer game. So I saw zero internet today until just now.
By the way, the Bears 5-2, despite being.
I'm okay, by the way. Thanks for asking. The doctor said I'm fine.
You're fine. Nobody's worried about you.
Are you okay, Ryan?
No.
The Bears don't even have they have the best point differential of all 5-2 teams with a negative point differential. There are 3 of them.
Who are the other 5-2 teams?
The Browns have a ESPN. You can look at standings, but it's a good point. The Browns are 5-2 with a negative 21 point differential. And the Bills are 5-2 with a negative 4 point differential. The Bears are 5-2 with a negative 2 point differential. And I think that when we look at this game and when we get closer to the end of the season, we might look at this game as what cost the Bears a playoff spot if the Rams get in over Chicago, which is entirely possible because all 4 teams in the NFC West could get in. And I think the Rams might be good.
The Rams are better than they are. Who they lose to last week? They laid a dud last week.
Well, I'm going to say one thing real quick about that because I know we've been talking about the fact that all these NFC West teams could end up in the postseason. There is one downside to having all the teams in this race, and that's what it's tiebreakers. Because right now, let's just say the season ended today, so this tiebreaker thing is easy to explain. The Bears are 5-2, the Cardinals are 5-2, and the Rams are 5-2. So that's your 5, 6, and 7 team. If let's say there was another team 8th at 5-2, the Rams and Cardinals tiebreaker, they use a divisional tiebreaker to eliminate one of those teams first. So the Bears and Rams head-to-head matchup wouldn't matter.
That's fair. That's a good point.
So it will be interesting if we do have, like, say, 3 NFC West teams locked into, those bottom spots.
And by the way, in the Browns' defense for their terrible point differential, that basically is the 2 blowout losses to the Ravens in week 1 and to the Steelers last week.
So they lost to good teams?
Well, those 2 games were lopsided, 38 or whatever to 7-6. Otherwise, I think they've, clearly won some football games, and I think those are only 2 losses. So that's it. Yeah. That's all the points. Okay. There you go.
So are the Rams. I feel like we've been kind of not knowing what to think of them all season because going in this game, their 4 wins were against the NFC East. What do you know about someone that's like winning an arm wrestling contest against 4 babies? You don't know anything. You don't know how strong you are if that happens.
The Bengals tied one of those babies.
Yes, the Bengals did tie one of those babies. Yeah. So now they get to play the Dolphins. They get Tua's first start, which I can't believe that Flores is throwing 2 out. against Aaron Donald. That just seems like a disaster waiting to happen. But, they don't have an easy schedule either coming up. After the Dolphins, they have the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the 49ers, and the Cardinals. Yikes.
I feel like we don't know anything about this season so far. Like, I feel like the more we play, the less I know about what's like who's good and who's bad. Every week I'm changing my mind about what's going on. Like the most stable thing.
See what Nick Foles just said?
The most stable thing is Brinson and Russ meeting. The most stable thing might be the Eagles winning the division of the NFC East. All right, go ahead.
The Jets finishing in last.
Nick Foles is doing his press conference as we're recording this, and he said, bear in mind the Bears just lost to fall to 5-2. And he said, everything's in front of us. The season's not over. Season's not over. You're 5-2, bro.
You literally interrupted me to say that.
I mean, that's the Bears in a nutshell. They know they're fraud.
But also, that's what we just made it sound like the first half of the podcast that their season is over. So I feel like that's how everyone's reacting to this loss, and Foles is reacting the same way, which makes it even more hilarious.
I think the Rams are good. Jared Goff still is a concern. I think Darrell Henderson's awesome. Sean McVay got a little cute at the end of this game. You're trying to run Robert Woods on a jet sweep when you're trying to run the clock out. Just feed the ball to your running backs. Don't fumble. That's how the Bears even had a prayer to get back into this game.
They didn't have a prayer, though. I think that's the thing you run, and you say worst case they score a touchdown and we still win by 14 points.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't want to let it happen, though. I think the Rams offense is good again, and they went up against a good defense. And I think they'll probably handle lesser teams fairly well.
How do you know that? Breech just pointed out they've beaten the NFC East.
Well, those are lesser teams. They handle them pretty well.
That's true.
But you're not going to get to the playoffs going that way is my point.
They're 5-2 now.
They're in the division where they're third place.
I mean, their defense they have the Dolphins, the Seahawks. Ooh, this is a tough schedule.
Well, all those NFC West teams have
Dolphins, Seahawks, Buccaneers, 49ers, Cardinals, Patriots.
Well, they'll beat the Patriots. We know that much.
Oh. I don't know. McVay has sort of a history of
Super Bowl revenge.
It's sort of curling up when he sees Bill Belichick. I don't know. I think the Rams are a good team.
I think the Rams are the worst team in their division. I don't mean that as a slight.
That's not a slight. That makes them the 5th best team in the NFC. 7th.
Yeah, I think the 7th is where they're at right now.
There's going to be something is going to happen with these NFC West teams, whether it's an injury or a fluke game or something where one of them is going to miss the playoffs.
It's interesting though that you think that the Rams are absolutely the worst team, because if there is one team that Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray really struggled against last year, it was the Rams, because they had the 49ers on the ropes. They had the Seahawks on the ropes last season, but they got stopped by the Rams in both games. And I don't know if that's just McVay out, McVay and Kingsbury are good buddies. It's just knowing your opponent so well that you know what they're going to do, or the Rams just had more talent. But I wouldn't just come out and say that the Rams are definitely worse than the Cardinals.
Would you say the Rams season is over?
Yes. No, I would say that. I mean,
Rams are fine.
You could have just 2 teams go from the NFC West. You just don't know.
Well, there's going to be one team from the NFC East. We can all agree on that. Yeah, you can get 2 teams from the NFC South and 2 teams from the. No. So you need 1 team from the NFC North. It would come down to like the Bears versus the Rams, or Bears versus the Cardinals, or Bears versus the 49ers. I mean, it's going to come down to the Bears. Are the Bears what we saw tonight? Or are the Bears a better team with a better defense that can steal some more wins? That's the question. Can they steal some wins they stole wins early. Can they steal a couple more wins late down the stretch? And if they can, they'll make the playoffs. If not, then all 4 NFC West teams are getting in.
It'd be way more entertaining if the NFC West teams make it and the Bears don't. No offense, Bears fans.
Would you at all consider going back to Mitchell Trubisky at any point?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This is what I was going to say about the, Foles flopping once they got inside the 10-yard line, because he there's not enough room to think, because the defense can cover everything when you're inside the 10, because they have less room to work with. And then once Foles faces the pass rush, you can't do anything. What if you just let Foles drive them downfield and then you put Trubisky in once they get to the red zone?
He's Taysom Hill, basically.
Yes, except Foles isn't as good as Breech, so you don't feel bad about pulling him.
And Mitch Trubisky is actually better than Taysom Hill. I mean, boom.
We just did Matt Nagy's job for him.
You're a genius, Breech.
I'm going to tweet that to the Bears Twitter account and see if they're interested.
All right. Anything else on this game?
How were the Bears special teams, Breech? Anything on that?
Well, they were only on the field for like 2 plays.
I'll be honest, I didn't watch their special.
Actually the Rams probably a little iffy now at kicker because Sam Sloman had a field goal blocked in this game, and it's because he kind of has a naturally low kick, and he'd been struggling extra points earlier. And I won't be surprised if they end up making a change. I don't think they would do it this week because they're on a short week and they have to fly cross country to Miami. But they do have a bye after that, and I hope they don't, because if you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing my Miami of Ohio hoodie because that is where Sloman went to school and also where Sean McVay went to school.
By the way, I don't know what I was going to say. Oh, the Bears and Rams 3 straight years in a row, primetime games, and all 3 games are going under. And the Bears and Rams play, hammer the under. I hope you listened to the betting podcast beforehand. DFS, we didn't do a whole lot for you. We were on Josh Reynolds, so sorry about that. But that's the show. We'll see you tomorrow.